Disappeared me. Oh, we're back on.
We're back on. Hi, we've got Leigh back from Addiction Release Coaching. Thank you for joining us today, Leigh.
Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. Today we're going to go through, and I'm really excited because Leigh is excellent at explaining a technique called timeline. And what we're going to ask Leigh to go through is just an overview of how this process works and how it can be beneficial for a person going through a coaching process and how you could use it personally as well. So I'll hand over to Leigh, and Leigh, take it away. What is timeline and how does it work?
Ooh. Okay, I'll put a bit of foundation in because to me timeline is an amazing technique which is super powerful, and it enables where people may have negative attachment to past experiences which they've filed in the unconscious because they made a decision at a time. It can take away the negative attachment, which is keeping them blocked, change the meaning they made to it, therefore freeing them up to get back in flow.
Great. So timeline actually deals with past experience and past emotions that we've attached to an experience. Is that right?
Very much so.
Okay, fantastic.
And due to the fact that probably the best way to explain it is if you think of the image of an iceberg.
Yeah.
There is a very small amount above the water, which will, I'll compare that to the conscious mind and what we actually function on. A huge mass is below, and researchers have said that we run on up to 95% unconsciously.
Yeah.
So that's our breathing, regulating body temperature, blinking, digesting. We don't think about these things. And there's other parts, once we start to become aware of them, we can actually step into, as we refer to, cause, and taking responsibility and being in our power. It enables us to be able to take control over our situation rather than being at effect and being, they did it to me. No, people aren't necessarily doing it to us. It's what we make because we're meaning-making creatures. So if the meaning we've made as a result of that isn't working for us, we can substitute, release the negative attachment to the past event, take the learnings, and then be able to move forward. And with doing this technique, the other thing about it is that, like many techniques both you and I have learned, when we work with people, we don't do for them. We help facilitate, but we teach people how to fish, because when somebody may be fearful, stuck, whatever you want to call it, that's a negative emotion, they're not in a powerful state.
Yeah.
And to be able to empower people and teach them the technique, they can therefore step into their power if a circumstance arises in the future. Because as we take off the most important or the largest trauma or painful experience, other things will surface, and it helps free us up by clearing those.
Okay, great. So timeline is actually a process in which you can use to reflect on, for example, a childhood experience or even a past adult experience, any experience that you've had that you've associated a negative emotion to, and working with a coach or working with somebody during this process enables you to disconnect that negative emotion and actually reframe it and have a look at it differently. Because we don't often reflect back and go, actually, maybe that's not what happened. Maybe blah, blah, blah happened. Or I'm going to decide that I want to feel differently about this experience. We just, as Leigh has said, put it like an iceberg, shove it under the water, forget about it, and just remember it as a negative, painful experience. Using this process, you can actually break that down and associate a more resourceful state or a more resourceful emotion to that particular experience. Is that right, Leigh?
Very much so. If people want to imagine or visualize it as you've got a bag and you keep throwing negative experiences in, it's going to weigh you down.
Yeah.
And that's not getting the best out of your resources. So by removing what's not working and substituting, so releasing the negative experience and then substituting it with the positives and being grateful for what was learnt at that time, it helps us lighten our bag and move more efficiently and effectively.
Excellent, excellent. So it's all about taking the experience and pulling it apart and realizing what you've learned from it and then being able to move forward, but then also letting go of the past negativity that we've attached to it. So Leigh, give me a rundown. How would a timeline process work with somebody? Give me a step-by-step overview, very general, very basic overview of how timeline works.
Okay, if I had a client in front of me, I would educate them first on the experience of how we store different experiences sequentially in our mind. So to be able to determine what we did yesterday, what we're going to do tomorrow, or where we are now.
Yeah.
If we have a negative experience in the past, which we've layered upon and pushed it further down, it's still taking energy. So therefore, rather than working forward, what we would do is ask the person who has the trauma or negative experience when they first made that decision. So we get a frame to put it within, what the decision was. Then we calibrate how much it's impacting the person's life currently.
Okay, what do you mean by calibrate?
Okay, what I'll say, okay, if it's a large amount that it's impacting them, it'll be at a 10.
Okay, yeah.
Very little, 0. So generally, if it presents as a problem, I would suggest it's going to be up over the 5 mark, depending on the person's perception.
Yeah.
The reason we calibrate is to be able to determine how much difference in the shifts that have happened, because as this is an unconscious process and we're dealing with the unconscious mind, quite often people, as the neurology is shifting, may not actually realise how much of a change has happened.
Yeah, yeah.
So it serves to provide evidence of it actually succeeding.
Yeah, so if I was to go through this process with you and you were my coach, when you say it's an unconscious process, I would still be awake, but what kind of state would I be in while you're taking me through this process?
Well, it's a matter of getting you safe, changing your brain waves into alpha, which is a more relaxed state, which therefore you can substitute more beneficial states. And when I say state, whether it be high energy, low energy, depending on what you need to achieve that task.
Yeah.
In relation to the other thing about it is that, okay, a lot of people say it was either a good or bad experience. No, it was an experience, and then it's what we attach to it afterwards.
Yeah.
So if we look at it as energy can't be created or destroyed, yes, I'm getting a bit physics on us, only transformed, what we're doing is transforming the energy to get a better result.
Yeah, excellent. And the way that you do that is having somebody in a more relaxed state, so getting them to alpha, as you said, out of alpha and into a more relaxed state, and deepening their breathing. And you can do this with your eyes closed, you can do it with your eyes open, and just get you into a more calm, relaxed state, and so that we're able to access a larger portion of your unconscious mind. And generally speaking, your eyes would be closed and like you're in a kind of meditation state. Is that right?
Yes, so blocking out external stimulus which may prevent the person remaining present.
Okay, great. Awesome. Fantastic. And I really like how you've broken it down to say that this is how this process works and how it can be beneficial for you. So keep taking us through after you've gotten me to a state like, so we've talked about what the pain or the trauma is, and then you've gotten me to let you know or calibrate how painful we've associated this past experience to be. What would happen next? So it's quite a painful experience for me. What do we do next?
Okay. What I do is get the person to disassociate, so they can actually get above it, take the learnings rather than remain in trance of the negative emotion, which is no longer serving them.
Yeah.
By disassociating, it stops the emotional triggers happening and keeping them stuck in the cycle, and they can actually look at it for what it actually really was rather than the meaning that was made at the time, which may no longer be relevant.
Yeah.
So by getting them into what many people term as a learning position, getting them up above it, right? After they've first thing, decide when this first decision was made,
Mm-hmm.
get the person up above it so they're disassociated and it removes them out of the emotional state. Taking the learnings and the positives from it, and then also prior to that, after that, sorry, I'm just going through my head.
Okay.
Reframe what actually happened, add resources to ensure what the person believes is required to enable them to move forward. Also look at the positives they've taken from it so you can reinstall those.
Yep.
Then get the person to go before that moment and look at it with a less emotional attachment than what we call future pacing. So taking them to an event that's in the imagination in the future, which has many of the triggers or what we call anchors that may have in the past brought up negative emotions and kept the person stuck. By future pacing, we can test how effective the new things we've added and resources are, and if any more is required, add it in.
Yeah.
Like adding, changing the conditions of a recipe. If your cake's not cooking right, you either more temperature or less temperature.
Exactly. So it's all about discussing what the experience was, then finding out how painful it was so that we can then, after the process, we can look back and see how much things have actually changed. And then going through and, as you say, disassociating or being able to look at yourself almost like an out-of-body experience. Keep what we needed to learn, take the positives from it, reframe any negatives that we still have attached to that experience. And you can do that through many different techniques. I don't know about you, Leigh, but sometimes when I have an experience that I don't want to attach a negative emotion to, I think about that experience and then pretend like that's Donald Duck talking to me or Scooby-Doo, because how can you be angry at Donald Duck or Scooby-Doo? Seriously. And just by replaying just by replaying that, it totally changes that experience for me, because I've gone back and looked at it like you're explaining now. So, which is great. And then taking it through to the future and then allowing the person to see that it's no longer a problem or no longer a painful experience for them, because you've given them a new way of experiencing it and a new way of looking at it, as well as the tools and resources they need if a painful experience or a painful emotion comes up, how they can deal with it. So anchoring, as we say, in new emotions.
Yeah, and with that, to enable the person to remain disassociated rather than reinstalling the negative emotion, quite often a metaphor, because the person remains disassociated with positive resources brought in and the change in outcomes as a story can work because the person's entertained.
Yeah, exactly. And we all learn when we're entertained and we remember. I don't know about you, Leigh, but I can pretty much remember movies from my childhood, like Aladdin, like The Lion King, because they are full of metaphors, full of learning experiences, and full of stories made fun. And that's how we learn, is through metaphor.
Oh, never had any Hakuna Matata.
Exactly. You just what a smile as soon as you hear that. Yes, means no worries. Still remember that. And you know what? I haven't seen that movie in years, but it made such a strong impact because it was just metaphor layered on top of metaphor, on top of metaphor, on top of metaphor, and just beautiful stories that we can relate to our own experiences.
very much so.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. Okay, Leigh. So now that we've gone over what timeline, an overview of what timeline is, and I really appreciate you breaking it down for us because you do it so often and you do it so naturally, it can be hard to kind of take a step back and just take a broad view and an overview of what it is and try and explain it to somebody. So thank you so much for being able to do that for us. I know it is a bit challenging when it becomes like second nature to you.
Well, I actually find it beneficial because quite often I ask young kids how to do things with technology and they go, and I go, oh, geez, what did they just do? So
They're so
trying
used
to
to it.
remember that.
Yeah, no, it's great. Really appreciate it. So when would somebody use timeline, or when would they get the most benefit out of using a timeline process?
I would say with a deep trauma which has been re-ingrained and there's multiple layers to it.
Okay.
Another thing that people may find like important, because I've noticed when working with clients, they may be resistant at first, which may mean that they're unsure how they're going to present or whatever it is. But the important thing is, and I've found this, with boundary conditions, generally going to 2, which when I'm saying boundary conditions, something that needs to be in place to keep that structure and belief in place. By destabilising it, you find by the time you get to the second one, quite often a person, rather than speaking in clean language, which mean factual and stuff, they'll go into a metaphor, which is a good indicator, and you'll get changes in complexion and breathing, etc., and different tellers.
Okay, so give me another example of how that would work as far as boundary conditions. So we take people when using timeline or deciding to use timeline, often you're looking for that change, that facial flush, for them to have a bit more of a physical reaction. You're looking for that physical reaction in the person to see what kind of experience this really was for them.
Well, yeah, look, what I'll say is if somebody's resistant at first, till they're compliant, I may not utilise it, because to me, this is gold and you don't want to waste this process. And sometimes if the client's new, it may be a matter of building the trust and the rapport so they feel safe to take the transition. And then when you get to the core of things and you want to have a big shift in a short period of time, when you believe you've got something that's quite high up, it will cause huge shifts. It's like knocking out the table legs and bringing down the lid.
Yeah, exactly. So this isn't necessarily a process you'd use on the first time unless you had a lot of connection and rapport with the person, which obviously we need during coaching, but different techniques obviously take a different level of connection and trust because it is quite a vulnerable process to allow somebody to go through, as you say, a deep trauma. And allow you to take them through and feel safe enough to do that with you. So totally understand this is a process. Potentially, yes, for the first time that you've seen somebody, but maybe for a second or third visit when they feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to open up and to actually let go of that experience with you, because it's very vulnerable. It's putting them in a very, absolutely, they're 100% safe, but they need to know that you are safe and they can trust you before they're willing to let you do that. Just like a trust fall or anything that we do, we need to know the person's going to catch us.
Yeah, so quite often I might use, in the initial stages, some techniques to build rapport and trust, and also educate them in the processes so they have time to digest that they are in control. And a lot of the fallacies, even hypnosis, quite often, and people are confused with what it means, because gnosis being the Greek god of sleep, and because people may appear to be asleep, there's been sort of, some people have, A equals B, and that's not necessarily the case, because they've actually mapped people's minds. Well, have been under hypnosis, and it maps very differently to what they initially expected.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a lot of misconception of what hypnosis is, and based on what people have seen, and they're only going based on what they've seen and what they've heard about hypnotism, and that, you know, you're falling asleep, you're getting very sleepy, all the things that we grew up with and saw on TV. But once you learn more and you go a lot deeper into what hypnosis is and how it works, finding out how many beneficial techniques you can use with hypnosis or a state of hypnosis is actually very useful.
You actually just made me think. One question that people quite often ask when they say, what do you do? And I give them the answer is, can you make me cluck like a chicken? And how I differentiate is I'm a hypnotherapist and my intention is for therapy, not entertainment. And what a lot of people don't realise is there's things that are called compliance, and you actually see how willing the person is or safe they are to shift. And when you're doing it with an audience like a stage hypnotist, they're already screening for people who are most likely going to be good subjects.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I get that question a lot too, because, you know, you tell people you're a hypnotherapist and they're like, oh, can you make me to cluck like a chicken or bark like a dog? And I'm like, I don't know, do you want to? Because if you want to, that's great, but that's the only way I can make you do something is if you honestly want to do it. Because at the end of the day, you and I both know we've got zero control. We are only there to facilitate and assist change based on what the client wants and the client's outcome. So if your outcome is to cluck like a chicken, congratulations, now's your opportunity. We'll help you do it.
And I love what you shared there was that we facilitate. We are forming partnerships and we're working to assist the client to bring in resources that they haven't had previously. Otherwise, being the intelligent people that we get along, they would have already resolved it if they knew how to.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a matter of necessarily knowing how, it's being willing as well as emotionally being ready to be able to do that, and then having somebody support you through that process.
And where it's beneficial having somebody on the other side who is trained is that, as Einstein said, the same thinking that created the problem will not be the same thinking that resolves it. So doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome is the definition of insanity.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we often do.
Yeah, and creating an awareness for the individual and actually separating the incident and the emotional attachment can actually deepen the learnings, and then they can become excited to move forward. And I've seen some amazing shifts and results.
That's great, Leigh. That's really awesome. And it's so true that when you can separate the incident and the emotion and look at it and look at the emotion separately and go, what do I need to keep and what do I need to hold on to and what am I ready to let go of, is massively powerful, creating incredible shifts in people. And it really can happen in one session. Honestly, guys, it's one of the most powerful processes. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Look, honestly, I'd love to use it with everybody because I've gotten so much benefit out of it. But yeah, absolutely, Leigh, love it. Fantastic.
Yeah, and look, the other thing that you brought up before, when would you use it?
Yeah.
Some people think if I've used it once, I wouldn't use it again. No, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that because, as you know, once you remove the first major problem, up comes something else, which, because the priorities are changed. You take working down a list.
Yeah, exactly.
And it can be fantastic for removing other traumas, which the client may not have initially been aware of, that were keeping them locked in a pattern which was no longer serving them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the iceberg. The more that you take off the bottom, the lighter the iceberg becomes. So it starts raising its levels till it gets closer to the surface, which is also what brings up other traumas that have been sitting underneath that one, because that one was more priority and pain wise, so it had to sit on top. And then you get all these things that are stacked underneath and they start popping to the surface. And that's an excellent point, that you can use this process on multiple experiences or multiple things that you want to work on and get rid of the negative association that you have to it.
Yeah, look, by creating awareness, we enable our clients to make an informed choice. Look, if we're all ignorant to some things, let's face it, we don't know everything.
Absolutely.
But by creating an awareness, the client there then has a choice to make an informed decision about where they're going to go from there. If they want to keep repeating the patterns or if they wish to move forward and have something different.
Exactly. Exactly. Very true. Well, thank you very much for that, Leigh. I greatly appreciate your time as well as you being able to break down that timeline for us. Would it be okay if I asked you to put a little resource together, like an overview of what timeline is that we can send out to some of our listeners, that they can access of like exactly what it is? Because as we know, not everybody's learns through listening, but some people need time to process. So would that be okay if we just asked you just to put together like a little one-page information sheet about what timeline is and a bit of an overview of the process?
Well, one page. Yeah, I reckon I can do that.
Fantastic. We'd greatly appreciate it. Awesome. Now, Leigh, just let us know if somebody wants to get in contact with you for coaching or for training, how would they do that? What is the best way to contact you?
Okay, as you said before, I'm from Addiction Release and I deal with both chemical and behavioural addictions. So when I say addiction, obsessive compulsive usage of a chemical or behaviour despite adverse outcomes. If people want to contact me, Facebook is because I'm learning the tech side. I'm a better therapist than I am a tech head. And or on 0412 30 20 30. And look, we're here to help people because when we help one, it helps all of us. And
Exactly.
look, like when I've had my inspiration, some of my clients, and when you have people who, I'll share one without any names, you think would be dead because the last time you see them, they've slashed their neck and stuff and they're introducing you as the person who helped save their life.
Yeah.
Well, what can I say? That's just, it's pretty special.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's unfortunate that some people feel that they're in that much pain that they get to that stage. But it's honestly beautiful that there are people out there like yourself that have the skills and tools and experience to support people going through a process like that and seeing them come out the other side and introduce you as the person who saved their life, just like a paramedic would. Obviously, we're not medically trained in that way, but being able to help them get through that emotional period of their lives and being able to move forward in a more positive way is incredible. Honestly, it's just beautiful and something,
And
yeah.
the difference between many other practitioners and myself is I'm not just textbook.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I had addiction problems. Yes, I've dealt with the shame, the guilt, using what I'll call is an unresourceful technique of addiction, which, while it may work short term, most people realise that one of the hooks and the reason why it works the most effective is when we get off for a while, it works the best to get back on the substance because you get the most effect because the tolerance has dropped. But it can also kill you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And obviously we don't want that to happen, and it's great that you can help support people who have been through that process because you have been there and you have come out the other side, so you have the tools and the resources to be able to deal with that. And that's exactly what people going through that type of pain and that type of period of their life, no judgment, everybody's got their own challenges. I think it's great that you can support those people through it. Honestly, it's beautiful. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And the one piece I'll leave you with is quite often people see addiction as being the problem. No, addiction is symptomatic and it's an unresourceful state.
Yeah.
By addressing what's below it, the need, because there's three main reasons for addiction. One is exploration, two is performance, to go up or down,
Mm-hmm.
three is to deal with pain, whether it be physical or psychological. And because all behaviour serves a purpose. When we
Exactly.
look at how to fulfill the purpose, without the adverse effects, the person no longer needs that.
Yeah, yeah. So you're taking away the need for the addiction by dealing with the actual cause, not the symptom, which is addiction.
Yep.
Exactly. Love it. Fantastic. Look, thank you again so much for your time. Greatly appreciate it. Guys, please reach out to Leigh if there's any questions that you have. He's a beautiful soul, beautiful person, and just so giving and willing to help. So please, honestly, reach out if you need that help and support. We're here to help. All right, Leigh, I'll let you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much once again.
Thank you. All right, guys, we'll leave it there for today, and we'll be back again with some more interviews with Leigh, hopefully in the future.
Thank you. Look forward to talking to you.
Sounds good.